We appreciate having you here. So we're going to start out by sharing that our meeting is going to be recorded today. This is so that if anyone cannot join us tonight, that information will be posted to the students' Google Classrooms for our current freshmen, sophomores, juniors, and seniors. So this presentation is being recorded for those of you who are here with us tonight. We do appreciate you taking the time to join us. We have two phenomenal speakers joining us this evening. I'd like to start out by introducing myself. I'm Larissa Zalisco. I'm one of the counselors at Westmont High School and the counseling director. Meg Connolly is also here with us.
Hi, I'm one of the other counselors at the high school. I work with students primarily A through L, last names. Thanks so much for coming.
And I work with students M through Z. And I also want to introduce David Pierpont. He is our counseling intern this year.
Hi, everyone.
Thanks for joining us. As we go through our presentation, like I mentioned, we have two guest speakers joining us. So I'm going to introduce both of them right now. On this next screen, you'll see our guest speaker from Elmhurst University is Mahara Suhail. She is one of their admission counselors, and we're so happy to have her join us today. One of the reasons that we had reached out to Elmhurst is because of our data from last school year. So we collect student post-secondary data, and it was just under 10% of our graduates in the class of 2021 who attended Elmhurst University, which was a huge number for us at Westmont High School. So we wanted to make sure that we provided some of that data and shared some of the things that are unique to Elmhurst University, as well as really the impact of this pandemic. And I know that Mahara is prepared to talk a little bit about how the pandemic has changed things in the college admission world. So welcome, Mahara. Our next presenter is going to be Paul Daly. And Paul is a longtime friend of ours at Westmont High School. He's been a great partner to all of us in the counseling department, to Westmont High School, and to all of our Westmont High School families. OMH Partner Group has worked with us for very many years. And we're happy to have him on board today to share information about the financial aid process. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Mahara Suhail, who's going to talk a little bit about the college admission process.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that awesome introduction, Larissa and Megan. Good evening, everyone. Again, my name is Mahara. I will be talking to you guys a little bit about the admission process and how it affected COVID. I'm going to get my presentation up. Here it is. Awesome. So thank you again, you all, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Westmont counselors, for letting me join your guys this evening tonight. We've got a lot to talk about, and I'm excited to turn things over to Paul in a little bit. But before I do, I wanted to talk about how COVID has impacted the admission process for a lot of our high school students, in addition to how you can apply to Elmhurst and hopefully students. You're taking notes tonight, and hopefully you'll find a little bit to learn more about Elmhurst and see if this is a right fit for you guys. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and get started. So first and foremost, obviously this past year was a lot. I think that we can all agree to that. This was a really tough year for students, parents, teachers, counselors, everyone that was impacted by this has truly pushed through this year. And, I'm happy to see so much progress and so much resilience that has come out of it, because this school year has truly, been better than previous, obviously 2020. So I'm only going to be hopefully better moving forward from here. I'm excited to talk about these new updates in regards to what we've done at Elmhurst. But for starters, here, when the second COVID obviously hit, a lot of schools, and particularly college campuses, were affected, because that was a time where a lot of high school students, such as some of your friends who graduated not too long ago, stated, I'm going to take a gap year, or I'm going to go to community college, or I'm not even going to go to college, right? Those are the kind of conversations you were having with them. And with that, we noticed there was quite a decline in applications. But rest assured, we really talked with all of our students and their parents and notified them that, hey, college is still a great decision for you, even amidst a pandemic, right? So let's talk a little bit about how it's impacted admission. So more flexibility. Ever since COVID hit, a lot of your classmates who already graduated, I'm sure, talked about how their testing dates were delayed, or they were just completely canceled and rescheduled. Even prep classes were canceled or rescheduled, which caused a lot of issue and a lot of stress amongst you guys. So with that, we wanted to incorporate a new option, and that is test optional here for not only just Elmhurst University, but a lot of different college campuses around the countries. Right, you're taking a look at another option to apply. So the traditional route is usually with your transcript and then test scores, whether that's ACT or SAT. But a lot of college campuses, you'll notice in their admission process, they have the test optional option. So that's with a transcript and then a written essay. So that's something that Elmhurst University has incorporated, and I'll talk a little bit more about the application process at the end of the presentation. Proof of progress is also something that we are looking for. So as admission counselors, when we're taking a look at our high school students and their applications and their transcript, we've all noticed a dip in that semester when COVID hit, right? Everybody had a hard time adapting and transitioning into remote learning and a Zoom university. This was not something that was normal for students, and quite a tough transition to get adjusted to. And we understand that. However, we want to see progress, right? We need to see that improvement. Were you able to pick yourself up from that tough semester you had and go and take advantage of your resources and really pick yourself back up? That is something that not only myself, but all the admission counselors in this country is looking for, right? That resilience and that work ethic and taking those bad habits and turning them into good habits and really seeing that progress and growth. It's okay if you got a couple, low grades that semester, but we want to make sure that we see an improvement in the following semesters. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about the admission process in general, what to kind of keep in track of, look out for, and how to keep yourself best organized now that we're entering application season, right? First and foremost, keep yourself organized, right? I want all of my students here to create yourselves Google Sheets or Excels, spreadsheets, hide all the universities that you've applied to, and then create different tabs such as, what's the tuition? How much scholarship are we giving you? Was it a good fit at the campus tour? These are all key criteria that I want you all to really focus on, because at the end of the day, whether it's Elmhurst University, whether that's DePaul, Northwestern, whatever university it is, I just want you all to feel confident and happy in the decision that you end up ultimately choosing, right? Because that's your 4 years for the next 4 years, not mine, not Northwestern's, not anyone else's, it's yours. So keeping yourself organized is the best advice I want to give you guys while you start your application process to make it less stressful for you. Secondly, I want you guys all to keep an eye out for important dates. A lot of universities have deadlines, early action deadlines. Some universities have rolling admission, meaning you can apply even a month before school starts, such as Elmhurst. So you have to really keep an eye out for those important dates to keep yourself up to date. Thirdly, I want to talk about October. It is peak application season. So we're nearing October in just a couple days. So there's quite a few things happening. There's financial aid, which I'll be talking about in a little bit, as well as Paul. But also this is where a lot of students usually come for their college visits, speak with their admission counselors. So don't be shy. Call me, text me, email me, myself, and all the other admission counselors that you're getting in contact with, because now is a time to get started on college applications. I also wanted to talk about when's the best time to apply, right? Yes, we do have early action amongst a lot of other universities, but I want you all to ultimately apply when you feel most confident with your materials, right? So what does that mean? we're all expecting you to apply with your transcript. So say you're having a rough semester right now or didn't have the best grades, but you're kicking butt this semester and you're doing really well. Apply after this first semester, right? Let's see if you can get your GPA up a little higher, because I will say for college applications, the higher and the stronger the application, so stronger GPA, stronger test scores, the higher the scholarship you're going to receive. So that's something to keep in mind. Also, parents, I know this is hard, but I really need you all to let your students take the lead here. So that means when your students are applying to the application for Elmhurst or anything else, don't put your email. Allow the students to put their email, their phone number, all of their information, because this is their college process, not yours. You shouldn't have to worry about that. They should take this responsibility, because this is just step one of many other steps to when it comes to college, when they really need to take that initiative and take care of themselves. So again, allow them to take that responsibility and let them take the lead on these applications. And when it comes to the application materials, you've got your traditional transcripts. So we're looking for the most updated one. Some schools take weighted, some schools take unweighted. Here at Elmhurst University, we do take the weighted GPA. Test scores, so either ACT or SAT. We always accept the highest test score. Written essay, so this is something that a lot of colleges will either require you to submit or it's optional. For us, it's a requirement for the test optional portion. And then of course, letter recommendations and AP scores. So for us, letter recommendations is optional, as well as AP scores, which I will talk to you guys in a little bit at the end of the presentation. Moving forward, as Larissa mentioned, here at Elmhurst University, we have a very tight relationship with Westmont High School. Plenty of students, this past 2021, even prior to that, have attended and enrolled in Elmhurst University. And we are so happy to see this partnership and so many of you students coming to Elmhurst. And I hope to see many of you in person soon for open houses, scholarship competitions, and more. More of a COVID update here on the Elmhurst end. For now, at this current point in time, 84% of our classes are in person. So for those of you who love in-person classes, Elmhurst is a great place for you, because this is our current statistics. This is where it stands today. So 84% are in person, 13% are online, and 3% are hybrid, meaning a combination of both in person and online. We have a whole COVID-19 task force on campus where they take COVID very seriously, right? This is a campus where we don't mess around. Ever since COVID hit, we haven't had a single outbreak on campus, knock on wood, because we take really safe measures and protocols and make sure that all of our students, guests, and staff and faculty feel safe in this environment. We have incorporated a new requirement this year. All students, faculty, and staff are required to submit a vaccination card when they come to Elmhurst. So yes, that is required. However, with the exception of health or religious reasons, if that's an issue there, of course, those exemption forms are also offered and accepted. So let's more about Elmhurst University. We are a school that was founded in 1871. We turned into Elmhurst University. I know some of you still refer to us as Elmhurst College, but a couple years ago, we named ourselves University. We have been improving in so many areas. We decided to finally make this title change and help celebrate our sesquicentennial celebration, so our 150th celebration this year. So if you're ever on campus, it's very lively, it's very exciting. We just had our homecoming this past weekend that incorporated fireworks. So if you're interested in that, definitely swing on by campus for more exciting events. We are a certified arboretum. That means we're a botanical garden. So we've got tons of species on campus, from plants and animals. So all 4 seasons, it's gorgeous. As you can see, it's beautiful, beautiful campus. So I highly recommend you guys come visit. In total, we have 3,500 students on campus. Undergraduates, about 3,000. So you're looking at a relatively small school, right? And more about Elmhurst, we're located pretty much right in downtown Elmhurst. And these are just a couple visuals of our lovely, lovely area. It's a really quiet, safe suburb within Illinois. We've got the city center that's located at the top left corner. Brew Point Coffee, my favorite coffee shop. Everyone in Elmhurst University can attest to that. We've got Oak Brook Mall, we've got movie theaters, bowling alley, you name it. There's so much to do in the town of Elmhurst. And we have the Metro train station also located right on campus. So it's just a quick 30-minute train ride to the city of Chicago, which is phenomenal because this truly allows students to enjoy the city life, right? You get the best of both worlds, nice suburban lifestyle here in Elmhurst. In addition to that, you'll get the lovely city life in Chicago if you just hop on the train. And a lot of students utilize this train to not only enjoy their leisure time, but also internship opportunities, which I'll get into in a little bit. Here at Elmhurst University, we very much focus on educating, to live and work in a global society, right? So what does that exactly mean? We are a liberal arts university, so we really encourage our students and require them to take their gen ed. So even if you're a nursing major or an art major or whatever it is, all students still have to take their history, fine arts, math, all that good stuff. So what is Elmhurst all about? Here at Elmhurst, we have over 70 majors and 50 minors to choose from. Our top programs are nursing, education, business, psychology, biology, and speech pathology, also known as communication sciences and disorders. Again, these are just our top programs. A lot of these, I will say for nursing, 100% of the students who graduate from our nursing program end up either getting a full-time job or end up in grad school. And with our speech pathology major, it's very, very popular as well too. We're 1 in 2 schools in Illinois that actually owns a speech clinic on campus that allows our students to have that hands-on learning. And as well as with the nursing students, we are partnered with the Elmhurst Memorial Hospital that's located just 10 minutes down the road from us, where they loved our program so much that they decided to create an entire simulation lab at the lower level of their hospital. So you're looking at fake patients, fake hospital beds and rooms, and your professors are nurse practitioners. So you're really getting that hands-on experience and really learning from them. In addition to that, we have tons of pre-professional programs where we're affiliated with tons of other universities within this country, from Midwestern, DePaul, Northwestern, University of Urbana-Champaign, Florida. We've got tons of different universities that specialize in these pre-professional programs that we are affiliated with as well. So here at Elmhurst, we are a relatively smaller school, as I mentioned. Average classroom size is 18 students. So you really get that one-on-one interaction with your professors and students if that's what you're looking for. Our professors do such a great job. We have 158 of them that are full-time faculty, and 82% of them hold the highest degree in their field, meaning masters, PhDs, and a lot of them are coming from well-known universities from around the world. They do such a phenomenal job of creating a safe environment for our students. So you're not shy to raise your hand in class. I can attest to that. Actually, I myself did a graduate certificate in project management here and finished in May. And I remember sometimes I was having a tough time in my class, and I would just email my professor and ask them for extra assistance. And they would say, "Hey, Mahara, you got an hour? Let's hop on the phone and clear up your questions." I'd hop on the phone with them. They'd clear up every questions I had, and the next day I take my test and ace it, right? So our professors are really here to support us, to help us graduate on time, get the internships that we really want, and truly see us succeed in our time here at Elmhurst. We also offer tons of resources here on campus, from individual tutoring for anyone who has learning and disabilities, or any disabilities for that matter. We have mentoring programs as well, to faculty office hours, and my favorite, the Wellness Center. So this is where we have 15 nurse practitioners that really take care of our students and their physical and mental health being. We offer 15 free counseling sessions for our students and faculty and staff on campus. So we take mental health very seriously here. So this is something that all of our students take advantage of. We have the lovely WCPE, our Weekend Center for Professional Excellence. So this allows our students to really prep for when it comes time to be professionals in the world, right? So for that career guidance, study abroad, honors program, graduate school preparation, and more. And my favorite, we have a career closet down there, meaning say you have a last minute interview and you forgot your tie at home, or if you forgot your heels, we've got you covered. We have a whole closet for you to borrow clothes and accessories from. I wish my closet looked like that. It's got a lot of useful stuff for our students to borrow. So again, we've got you covered in many ways. 83% of our students here at Elmhurst University gain some sort of internship, independent study opportunity before they graduate. 93% of the students who graduate from Elmhurst University end up having a full-time job or end up in grad school within 6 months. 93%. Why? Because of our resources, because we have faculty, staff here to help you every step of the way to make sure that you're truly taking advantage of all the resources and all the time here on campus. We've taken our students to over 2,000 different internships, mainly in the city of Chicago too. And that just, we have a couple lists of our top organizations that we've sent our students off to: Morgan Stanley, NBC TV, House of Blues, you name it. In addition to resources, study abroad is very, very popular here at Elmhurst University. We've taken our students to over 68 countries, from Spain, Morocco, Ireland, and we offer tons of scholarships for students who want to study abroad. So one of my students, I was talking to them last year, and they were saying, yeah, Mahara, I pretty much went to study abroad for free because I gained so many scholarships. And you're not at all falling behind in your classes because you're taking these classes abroad. So as long as you're working with the study abroad coordinators and your advisor, you're in good shape. So here at Elmhurst University, it is very, very, very easy to get involved. We have over 75 different clubs and organizations for students to get involved in. A lot of times these are grassrooted, meaning students themselves have created some of the clubs and organizations here on campus. We have 20 Division III teams here on campus for both men and women. And we are huge on service projects here on campus as well too. We are huge on Greek life. We have 8 different fraternities and sororities. It's nothing like what you see on movies. We focus on the philanthropy aspect of it. So do lots of bake sales and raise money for homeless shelters and nonprofits and such. So let's talk a little bit about campus living. So I will say you do not have to live on campus your first year. That's not a requirement. You're more than welcome to commute. So it's truly whatever you feel comfortable with. About 1,000 students live on campus. We have about 6 resident halls and 12 different housing and apartments. So typically our upperclassmen live in those. Back in fall 2019, we were about 100% capacity, meaning every room was filled because it's so much fun. Students love living on campus, love building those connections and relationships. And every single resident hall has laundry and a kitchenette. So parents, all you have to do is hand out the laundry detergent to your students, and they should, handle that by themselves and not come home with dirty laundry. And of course, kitchenette. So sometimes on the weekends, students will bake cookies or have a little party. So again, it really allows you to enjoy your time outside of the classroom. So we have a scholarship competitions, which I'll get to in a little bit. But before that, I want to talk to you guys about our application, of course. So the most important part of this presentation I want you guys to take out of this is, of course, application, right? Let's talk a little bit about what are the expectations for Elmhurst's application. So first and foremost, we do have an early action deadline. So that is this November 1st, okay? So by November 1st, we would love for all of our students to submit their application. And my favorite part, our application is completely free. You've got nothing to lose. So go on our website. At the top right corner, there will be a big button that says apply. So start your application there. You can always save it too and come back to it on a different time to pick it back up. But again, it's free, so start it today if you can. And we really want you to get that in, early action deadline in before November 1st, because surprise, we do give you an extra scholarship for just applying early action, which is really cool. But say, you want to wait till semester, pick up your grades, retake your SAT, that is totally okay, because we are rolling admission, meaning there's no hard deadline for us. You can still apply, after November, January, February, whenever you feel most comfortable, as long as you communicate. And then when it comes to the application requirements, you have two options. Option number one is a traditional route. So like I mentioned in the beginning of this presentation, we are really looking for our students to submit their transcript, most updated one. And again, we take your weighted GPA, and we do go off of a 4.0 scale. And then a test score. So this can be either ACT or SAT score. We'll always take and accept the highest one. And then option number two is test optional, and this is the most popular option, in fact. So for this, you need your transcript, most updated one, and then a written essay, okay? So this written essay, we have a couple prompts located inside the application, so you can answer any of those. Or you can also submit one of your best work that you've completed in your previous and most recent English course. So you have a couple options there, which is really neat. Optional materials are letter recommendations, of course. If you want to butter up your application more, I highly recommend you do so, especially for anyone who is sitting at a low GPA, doesn't have the best test score. Any additional materials really helps. Just to give you more context, again, I am the assigned admission counselor, so I am your go-to person. I will be the one reviewing your application when you are applying. So any questions, comments, or concerns, you can always contact me, because I will be the one who will make that decision ultimately. And then going back to additional optional materials, AP scores. So for those of you who are taking any AP classes and you end up taking an AP test for it, if you score a 3 or higher, that will come in as college credit, which is really nice. And of course, if you're partnered with a local community college, such as you, give us your transcript from them. So like I said, early action is November 1st. And I wanted to highlight a little bit about FAFSA before I turn things over to Paul. October 1st is when financial aid or FAFSA opens up for next year, right? So for all of you seniors out there that are tuned in right now, make sure you are ready October 1st, or that first week at least, because we would really love for you to submit your financial aid. And while you're filling it out, it will ask you all the schools you want to apply to, and make sure you list Elmhurst University on there. This is really important, folks. Why? Because say you forget to list Elmhurst University, we cannot give you a financial aid package then. That is why it's really important you put down our school code. So say you apply before November 1st and you went ahead and already applied for FAFSA. By December 1st, you will get an early decision, meaning we will let you know whether you're admitted to the university, what scholarships you're receiving, and what your financial aid breakdown looks like, all before the holidays. How awesome is that? And my favorite part, once you realize what your decision or what your package looks like, then you just give me a call and say, hey, Mahira, I received my decision. I'm ready to do a cost payment breakdown. So a cost payment breakdown is awesome, because that's when I can take a look at tuition and then take a look at all of your lovely scholarships, grants, everything that you were eligible for, and start plugging that in, and then letting you know what your estimated out-of-pocket cost will look like. And if you want to do a monthly payment plan, whether that's 10-month or 5-month, I can let you know what you will be anticipated to pay in those monthly payments. So that can all be done before the holidays, as long as you're keeping on track of what all these deadlines. So again, definitely take a note of this. November 1st, early action deadline. Make sure you apply for FAFSA. And then lastly, scholarship competitions, which I grazed over just a little bit. We host 2 every year, and one is for everyone who's done service learning and volunteer work. The second is for all of my first gen students out there. I am also first gen. So this means if mom and dad have a bachelor's degree or higher, you are automatically in your application going to receive $2,000. So you can tell mom and dad, thank you for that. In addition to that, you will qualify for our American Dream Scholarship Competition. Stay out, or for these scholarship competitions, you do have to be admitted, meaning accepted to the university, and this happens during spring term. So this happens next semester. It's gonna take a while, but I wanted to put this on your radar now so you can for it, because for each of these scholarship competitions, you can win a full ride to Elmhurst University. That's right, all 4 years taken care of. You don't have to pay for anything. So just wanted to put that on your radar now. If you have any questions at all, please let me know. Here is my contact information. Again, I am so incredibly excited to meet you all, whether you're a senior or even a junior and sophomore getting an early start to the application process or college process. You can easily contact me. I'm happy to set up an individual appointment with you, whether that's phone call, via Zoom, or in person. I would love to meet with you all. Thank you. Thank you. I'll go ahead and turn things over to Megan.
Thank you so much, Mahara. That was awesome. We really value our relationship with Elmhurst and appreciate you sharing that great information on the college admission process and everything that Elmhurst has to offer. So thank you so much. Our next speaker tonight is Paul Daly. So we've been working with Paul for many years, since before I've been at Westmont High School. Paul works for OMH Partner Group, and he is a phenomenal resource when it comes to everything financial aid and FAFSA related. Because, I mean, this is always an important thing to share because FAFSA can provide critical funding for students to be able to attend college or a trade school that they otherwise maybe couldn't afford. And also there's a new element this last school year, the Illinois state added this as a graduation requirement. So completing the FAFSA is now also a graduation requirement for any students attending public high schools in Illinois. So without further ado, and Larissa, do you have anything else to add or?
If I may, I just wanted to touch briefly on one additional topic that Mahara brought up as far as test optional goes. We had a lot of students and families throughout last school year asking us questions about test optional. I wanted just to highlight the one website that was helpful. It's called fairtest.org. That website highlights all of the colleges and universities throughout the United States that are now test optional. And that website has continued to be updated throughout this school year as well. So if you visited fairtest.org, you can see that there are over 1,700 colleges and universities now throughout the United States that have gone to test optional. So Mahar, I appreciate the information you provided about the admissions process, so also specifically at Elmhurst. But I want to highlight that this is the case throughout really the entire United States of America. So we've definitely been seeing some trends emerge through this pandemic. So thank you again for highlighting many of those things that you talked about in the admissions process, as well as the information you shared about Elmhurst. And without further ado, we'll turn it over to Paul Daly.
Okay, great. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Well, thank you guys again. You guys, thanks for having me again. I know it's been, I don't even know how many years, but I think Westmont was like the original, one of the original 6. Like the first year my sister and I started doing this, I think Carol Rostek was there at the time, and she was kind enough to let us come on board and start doing our financial aid nights. So I love coming back to Westmont. You guys have a great group and super excited to share some of this stuff with you here. Yeah, great information. Thanks. I keep getting your Mahara, right? Am I saying that right? Okay, sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. I actually wrote it. That's like sound it out, but I don't want to. I keep messing up. I apologize. But thank you. That was great information.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Yeah, and so you know, it's just kind of interesting for me because I've been doing this for, I don't know, 25 plus years, and when I first started doing this, I wasn't married, didn't have kids, and now here I am, and my oldest went to college this, you know, what, last month or something. And so it's been kind of strange leading up to this. I mean, I've done, I don't know how many FAFSA forms, probably thousands, and profiles. And so that part wasn't really that big of a deal, but it's just that whole college process thing, you know. It's like, okay, are we making the right pick? You know, do we get in schools we're trying to get into? Does the school feel like it's a good fit? What about the financial aid, the money part of it, the social aspect of it? So I get it now as a parent. I understand much better than I did 20 years ago, put it that way. So tonight I want to talk about this financial aid process and just logistically how it works. You know, what is aid? Where does it come from? What do award letters look like? When do they come? And then the second half, we're going to dig in a little bit more on income and assets and how are they assessed and how they look at them. We'll talk about special circumstances, what's included, what's not, 529. So we got a little bit of ground to cover here. So I'm going to try to move through some of this a little bit quicker than others, just to make sure we get done on time. But my official title is financial advisor. And so that's what I do. College financial aid planning is a subset of that. And so I bring that up because you can't unlink, like, all of this stuff is related. You know what I mean? It's like what you make it work, and everybody would wants to retire at some point, have money to do it, and yet we've got these college expenses coming up down the pipe. So all of that is part of the big picture. And so I just tell families, don't lose sight of all of that, right? I get it. Right here, right now, we're looking at financial aid, but at the same time, it is connected. And so we do want to make sure that we pay attention to this other stuff and not forget about it. But with that being said, let's move into the financial aid process here. Cost of attendance, it's skyrocketing. There's no doubt. I mean, excuse me, college costs, it's kind of an interesting industry because it does seem to go up every year, that sort of 6 to 8% pretty consistently, kind of almost regardless of what's going on around, outside in the world. And so what happens is it makes it very difficult for families to save for college. First of all, to even keep pace with the 6 to 8% or whatever that number is, that it goes up every year, that in and of itself is difficult. And the second issue is that most people save where? They typically save in the market. So what does the market do? It goes up and it goes down, right? And we don't know when, and we don't know how bad, and we don't know how often, and all of that stuff. So what if 2008 hits in the next 8 to 9 months and you go to college next year, right? That could be a problem, right? That could be a big problem. So saving for college is very, very difficult. It's not easy to do. It's hard to keep pace with it. And so if you're not sitting around with a bucket of money, right, just to write checks for this stuff, you're not the only one. You're not the only one. For a lot of families, the financial part of this is part of the picture. I get it. It's not everything. I mean, there's other things that come into play. But certainly it is a piece of that pie, right? So we do want to make sure we're doing it right. This cost of attendance is set by each college, and it's, they'll call it actual college cost, total cost of attendance, comprehensive cost. There's a couple different terms I'll use for it. And I'll talk about why that's of importance here in a second. But again, that price tag is set by the school, and it's supposed to be what average student, right, costs to go to that school. So tuition, fees, books, spending money, sort of the whole package. A couple myths about financial aid, and I just wouldn't fall into these traps. I mean, yeah, there's no doubt they're basing your ability to pay on what you make and what you have. There's no doubt about it, right? Income's a big part of it, but it's not the only factor. It's not the only factor. You could have two families, everything identical. They could have the same need at two schools, but one might be a state school, one might be a private school. Private schools typically do a much better job meeting the need. That family might get a great aid package, and maybe the state schools isn't so hot, right? And so, yeah, did they not get as much money because of income? No, it had nothing to do with that. It was more so just on the ability for the college to come up with the difference, with the need. Again, nothing you can do to improve your package, your financial aid. I wouldn't fall into that trap. It's analogous to the IRS. IRS has IRS code, right? It's 40 miles high. Okay, I mean, it's written into law by Congress. It's signed by presidents. The IRS is in charge of kind of enforcing all this stuff. And Department of Education and the IRS, Congress, Senate, President signing the law. It's all federal law. The FAFSA is a federal document, right? And it's all part of federal law. But within that law, for some families, sometimes there's some stuff you can do to reduce what they think you can afford to pay, or maybe increase the amount of need to show at a school. So I wouldn't fall into either one of these traps. They may not be true. And if you do, it could cost you potentially, it could cost some serious money, on the back end. So, deadlines they were mentioned earlier, and yeah, just don't miss them. The Elmhurst has their November 1st one. They want to try to get all that stuff in before that. And so I would agree. I would, from my perspective, I tell clients, and when I do these workshops, if you can get try to get your FAFSAs and or profile, if you need that form, try to get that in, maybe that first week in October. Then you'd be fine. You're going to be in plenty of time. Most schools, November 1st might be kind of the earlier ones you see out there. So you should have that should be plenty cool as far as not missing deadlines. If you do miss deadlines, you can run the risk of reducing aid, maybe a loss of financial aid. So just, they're there for a reason, right? And so just, try not, don't skip them, don't miss them. So for timing on this stuff, if you have a senior now going 2022, 2023, which is next year, which is, for seniors in high school, FAFSA is about to open up Friday, October 1st. And if your school wants or needs what's called a CSS profile, that's a supplemental form, which I'll go over here in a second. That one also can be started and done after October 1st for next year. It's always October of your senior year. So if you got juniors, your next year, sophomores 2 years out, freshmen, you got 3 years out, right? So that's the timing on this stuff. So we've got two forms. We've got a free application for federal student aid, which is a FAFSA form. That's the one that you hear about. All colleges are going to require it. They're going to use that form to if you're eligible for federal, state, or money from the college themselves, they're going to use that form. It uses what's called federal methodology. It's free to file. Again, submitted electronically after October 1st, senior year. There's another form up here called CSS profile. Not all colleges are going to require it. Again, October of senior year. It uses a different formula. It uses a formula called institutional methodology, which tonight I'll kind of, I'll point out the differences between the two in case your school needs that profile. Typically, the schools that are going to want the profile are going to be the ones that kind of like that Ivy League type school. The two in our backyard that want it would be like Northwestern, University of Chicago. They're usually the ones that are, super expensive and, really, 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 really hard to get into. Those are typically kind of the profile schools. Just check with them. You can check on their site. You can go to the College Board site. The same people do the ACT, SAT testing, and just run a search. Look for, CSS participating schools, and you find they have a PDF out there that you can search pretty easily and figure that out. So how this works is, let's say you've got 10 colleges, and let's say Elmhurst is one of them, right? So you would list all 10 of your schools on there, and let's say 4 of those colleges wanted the CSS profile. Only 4 would go onto the profile. So only those 4 schools would see the information's on the profile, right? Okay, so that's how these two forms kind of work together. They've really done a good job over the years. Kind of in the old days, right? You had to fill out the little circles and check the boxes and write everything by hand, the paper stuff. And you know what? If you made a mistake, it was kind of a pain, because it took 6 weeks to process. You didn't know about it. They'd send it back. It was just the mail part of it, right? It just took forever. So when they went to the electronic version, when they first started doing that, there was still some issues. The logic that they built in wasn't so hot, but they've really, really done a nice job with that. I got to give them credit. They've built in some pretty decent logic on the FAFSA. So they've eliminated, like, you can't put a birth date in that says someone's 18 and then try to claim they're 24 for independency status, right? Or you can't say, they're going to be a first-year college freshman and then check the box that says they're going to graduate work type of thing. So they built in these conflicting things. So that part's not too bad. My recommendation is to really understand what they're looking for. In other words, sometimes the federal government defines things differently than we would. So if most people have some cash, maybe their house and their retirement are probably their two biggest assets. It's typically what I kind of run into. And so somebody said, okay, list the value of your investments on the FAFSA, and you had, you know, $500,000 in a 401k or something. Most people would think, yeah, that's an investment, that's an asset, right? It's my 401k, it's in the market, it goes up, it goes down, it's managed. Yeah, it's an asset, it's an investment. Well, if you put that on a FAFSA form, you've made a mistake, and you've probably made a pretty big mistake, because anything in a retirement account, they're not counting that as an asset. So really understand, you know, what they're defining, how they're looking for it, right? What their definition is. Nobody's going to call you up and say, you know, hey, Paul, that 500,000 you put online, whatever, on the FAFSA, was that really your 401k? They're just not going to do it, you know. And so you've added a whole bunch of money now into your form, and that's just going to be assessed, right? And so that's obviously going to go, that's not going to, you know, that's not going to work in your favor, right? That's going to create a higher EFC, which is what these forms really produce. They do some other stuff too. I mean, they send to schools, like when you fill it out, you put Elmhurst on there, Elmhurst gets what's called student aid report and some other things. And so there is more information on there that the schools see, but the main thing that they really do is just, it's just kind of a processor really. And it spits out a number at the end that's called your expected family contribution level. So FAFSA and Profile don't really do anything as far as the money goes. What they're doing is processing the information you put on the form, and then it comes up with a number that it says, okay, this is the expected family contribution level for this family. And then the colleges take that number, and then they figure out what it is they're going to do with their award letters, right? So that's how you demonstrate need. We take the actual college costs, we subtract out what that EFC is, which that's a direct result of what you put on the form, right? That gets determined by that. And if there's a difference, that's the need, right? So everything I'm talking about here tonight is need-based aid. That's all I deal with. You know, if you're looking at merit or, you know, merit academic stuff or talent or sports or whatever, stick, you know, the high school, you know, I know Larissa and Megan and those guys over there, they got a great team, great group. They've got a ton of resources on that. I'm guessing you could probably check directly with Elmhurst on stuff like that too. They might be able to help you out with some non-need. But this is how you demonstrate need at a school. And just you know, even if you have need at a school, does not guarantee that college is going to come up with 100% of it, right? Some schools are actually really, really good, and they come up with 100% of the need, like 100% of the time, right? And other schools are not so great at meeting the need. And so that's another area where you could see some very significant differences between, you know, you could have 6 schools and get 6 totally different answers, right? So, and we'll talk about what to do about that. All right, let's throw these guys up. So this is a great slide because it really does a good job of just explaining kind of the whole picture of how this works and what we're trying to do. So we fill out a form, it comes up with the EFC, that's the red line. We've got our college costs, that's the, you know, those are the green lines. And let's just take, you know, 4 categories of schools. We got state, out of state, state, private, Ivy. And so the difference between the cost and the EFC is the need. Okay, that's the blue line. So if all 4 of these colleges met 100% of your need, right? Let's say all 4 of them did, what would the out-of-pocket be, right? The out-of-pocket would be the same. Okay, it doesn't change because they met 100% of the need. What if, for example, the private school or the Ivy League school, let's say they met 100% of the need, which, by the way, the private and the Ivy League schools are pretty good. You know, a lot of these private schools can meet 100% of the need. Most of them kind of get at least 80. So they're usually pretty solid, those 2 types of schools. But let's just say, you know, we'll use Elmhurst as an example. Let's say Elmhurst meets 100% of the need. And let's say we've got a state school that does not meet 100% of the need. Well, now what happens, right? Well, the school that had the much higher price tag actually ends up costing you less money. Because if the state school doesn't meet 100% of the need and you want to go there, well, guess who gets to come up with it, right? The family. And so in that scenario, this school would actually cost you more money than this school. And I see this happen. I mean, I've seen a lot of award letters over the years, And this happens. It happens, it's not unusual for it to happen. If somebody's EFC kind of falls between that, I don't know, maybe 10, 510 up to maybe 30 number, somewhere in there. This is not an unusual scenario to play out. So I think it's important to understand where you fit in this particular equation. Now, I've met with families and their EFC is 80,000, right? It's much higher than any cost to the schools. Maybe not news they want to hear, but you know what? They need to know it, because now you need to start thinking about, okay, maybe we do need to start looking at other schools, or maybe we really got to focus. I mean, some of those scholarships that Mahara was talking about are, I mean, full rides, those are outstanding. I mean, that is super cool. And so, that you want to really start pursuing stuff like that, if you know there's not going to be need there. So it's good to know where you fall in this. And I think this just gives a great snapshot of how this whole kind of process works. So, all right, a couple of questions. It looks like 529 stuff coming up. Yeah, we're going to get into parent assets and stuff in a second, parent student and 529. So got a whole slide on it. All right, where does aid come from? So we come from 3 different places. We basically got federal money, state money, institutional money. And by the way, this is typically how the school, the hierarchy and how they would fill packages. I mean, there's always exceptions in these rules, but this is typically what they would do. Colleges, they're going to max out whatever federal programs they can. So if you're eligible for federal Pell, there's certain EFC requirements for that. All schools pretty much put in the Stafford loan of $5,500 the first year. If there's need, there might be some, it'll be subsidized and some unsubsidized in there. Some schools have work study programs they build in. That's sort of a campus. It's a federal program, but not all campuses participate in it. So if they do and they're eligible, they might put a work study in there. State of Illinois has what's called a Monetary Assistance Program, or MAP award. Again, there's EFC requirements for that. You got to be a resident, going to a school. It could be public, private, though, it doesn't matter. So these first 2 areas is where you'll pretty much see, all colleges, they'll max out these programs as best they can. So for example, if you're going to a state school out of state or a private school out of state, there's not going to be any state money there, right? They don't have any access to that. But you don't have to do anything special here. They're going to put these programs in that they can. And so once they've maxed all this stuff out, then the college says, all right, what can we do from our own, from our own pockets, so to speak? And this is where you might see them split this up. Maybe they do, maybe there's $20,000 they come up with, but half of it is merit or academic and the other half is need, or whatever. They may blend it. Okay. Again, the private and Ivy League schools typically have much larger endowments than the state schools, which really don't have any. So this is why you're able to see these guys meet closer to 100%, if not 100%. And so they just have the ability. I mean, they have the finances to make those differences up. And so that's how they're able to do it. Now, some of the colleges, before they go into their own endowment programs or their own money, they ask you for the CSS profile, because they want to see that before they come up with their own funds. And so that's why you see some of these schools ask for the profile. The profile has a lot more information on it that the school does, or the FAFSA doesn't. So I'll kind of try to separate that out a little bit here. So that's kind of the hierarchy of where aid comes from. Award letters come back in, like, Elmhurst is you guys trying to get them out by December 1st, which is, again, as a parent, that's kind of cool, because where things are at, right? You got an idea, okay, what are we really looking at here, and that kind of thing. So I think that's awesome that you guys get them out early like that. Well, you will not get an award letter until you've been admitted to the school. There's kind of like admissions is going on and financial aid is going on, and then once you get admitted, admissions notifies financial aid, and then they come up with the award letter. And all schools send them, most of them will try to get them out, sooner than later. But obviously it's nice to get them, back. I would prefer to have them earlier. You should be able to have all of them in front of you before you make a final decision. These schools, they spend a lot of time and money and effort. They want great students. They want people there for the right reasons. So they like, they want you to make an educated choice, right? They want you to make one that you're comfortable with. So you should have all those award letters in front of you. They're not set in stone. You can absolutely go back in and talk to the officer of the financial aid office and say, hey, we've got special circumstances, or, maybe you've got 6 schools and 5 of them look great and 1 of them doesn't look so hot. Well, you can go back and talk to them, and say, hey, listen, we really want to go here. You're the great, this is the best nursing school. It's going to really help us do what we need to do. But there's other schools, going to end up costing 10 grand less. Is there any way you guys can look at this, work with us, match it, that type of thing. It's not a like, oh, I'm going to go negotiate the award letter. Okay. It's definitely an appeal process. It's more of, okay, let's see if we can work together to try to make this thing work. But if you have multiple award letters, it definitely gives you more options. It gives you way more flexibility, gives you the ability to shop, compare, and contrast. So for example, if you had one school, let's say it looked like A, right? And in school, you got you've got 2 schools, both needs the same. But if you only got this award letter back, there's a gap of 20%. Yeah, they did the Stafford loan. They got some work study in there. They did a nice grant, 25 grand. I mean, that's a ton of money. It's $100,000. Okay, that's not, that's a lot of money. But there's a gap. Okay, there's a 20% gap. Well, school B, on the other hand, they didn't gap. They met 100% of the need, and the loan amount's identical. I mean, school B is going to end up being maybe 10 grand less a year, right? That's $40,000 roughly, or 38 or something in this case, whatever the number is. So, you can't see differences like that. If you only had one college and it looked like school, looked like A, you don't really have a lot of other choices, right? Whereas if you've got, 6 or 8 schools and 4 or 5 look like B and 1 looks like A, well, now you've got some options. Maybe you talk to school A, and if they're able to work with you, great. Maybe you can work it out, or maybe they say, you know what, we're really sorry that this is just, this is the best we can do, and that's fine. There's no harm in asking. And then you can maybe make some decisions. Do we go with one of the other schools, or do we just, do we really, do we pay the extra and go here because for whatever reason? So it gives you more flexibility, gives you more options to have multiple award letters. So, all right. So let's jump into the formula side of this thing. There's a question up there about 529s, student assets and all that kind of stuff. We'll cover that for a second. So assets and income, the way these work are assets. All right, so there's parent assets and income and students assets and income. And the formula looks at both of those very differently. Assets for either or are at a point in time when you sign and date the form. So if you do your FAFSA on, October 5th, whatever your assets are on October 5th, that's what you have to report on FAFSA. Okay, they're a point in time. Income is what's called a prior or a 2-year look back. So if you're going to school in 2022, 2023, their 2 years look back is 2020. So they're going to look at your 2020 federal tax return. That's the numbers that are coming off of that return. Well, 2020 happened, right? And thankfully it's gone, right? But at the same time, there's a little bit of a gap there. I mean, they're basing your ability to pay on what you made in 2020, and they're based, you're not going to school until 2022, right? And they're basing your ability to pay on what you made in 2020. So, I mean, nothing can happen, right, in a couple of years. Well, yeah, everything can happen, right? Everything can happen. And so we're seeing a lot of that. I made 150,000 in 2020. I lost my job due to COVID. I haven't been able to find a new job. I don't know if I'm going to make 150 again. It's a totally different picture. And so we'll talk about how to handle that. That would be decreasing income. There's nowhere on the FAFSA to talk about that stuff. So you've got to do that under special circumstance type of letter, which we'll hit here before we finish. So student assets, income, let's get back to these guys. Anything that's in the student's name, if you have an UGMA account, an UTMA account, and 529s are separate, I'll get to those in a second, but CDs, bank accounts, brokerage accounts, stocks, bonds, any of that stuff, if it's an UGMA, UTMA account, that's a student assets. those are called unified transfer to minor, unified gift to minors. You have legally transferred ownership of that asset to that student, and you can't just switch ownership on those. It's assessed at 20% of $1 for FAFSA, and it's assessed at 25% of $1 if you have a profile. So if you've got two families and they've got 20 grand, you know, one's got it in the daughter's name and one's got it in mom's name, everything else identical, the family within the student's name will pay an extra $4,000 for school, and or the EFC will be $4,000 higher. Now, if you're applying to a college where you have need, and let's say that school does a good job of meeting the need, well, that's $4,000 less in potential financial aid you're going to get, right? It's kind of that simple. And so if there is need, if you do have schools that do a good job meeting the need, student assets can definitely cut into those aid packages. So we just want to make sure we handle that right. There are ownership issues with them. You can't just start changing assets around. IRS, Department of Ed are, you know, they are not going to be happy about that. There's stuff you can do to you know, solve those problems legally. We can use protected assets. There's a couple other strategies we could implement. So student income, there's an allowance amount. And again, they're going to base this on your student's 2020 income, which was last year. Probably didn't hit the allowance amount for most kids that age. So usually that's not a big deal. The only other thing that's weird here is that anything that asset made, so let's say you had a stock and it went up 10% and you had $2 grand of capital gain, it's 50% of whatever it made from $1. So in that case, it'd be 50% of the 2,000 and 20% of the total asset. So the student side of this formula is you know, it can, if there's need and you have schools that are doing a good job meeting the need, this is definitely an area that we would want to watch and make sure we get it right. Parent assets, totally different. There's allowances built into the formula. The assessment's a lot less. Same with the income. Basically, it's a little under 6% once you go over the allowances. So if your allowance is 20 grand and you have 30,000, you know, it might be costing you $500-600 in aid. Probably not the end of the world, especially if it's maybe a stock you like. Maybe there's a lot of tax to sell it. I don't know, right? It might not make sense. So this is one of these things you want to make sure we're looking at the big picture. Any move you make in this process, you want to make sure, you know, does it make sense? I mean, yeah, I could lower an EFC, but if I'm at a school that it's really probably not going to have a big impact, then, you know, maybe what's the point, right? Maybe it just doesn't make sense to do it. So parent income, there's allowances, anything over that, it creeps up to 47%. And so they bring these two, you get a parent EFC, and then when you combine them up, that's how you get that contribution level, right? Okay. So what's reportable? So for FAFSA, everything over here, and I call this non-retirement accounts. So this is like regular money, you know, you made it, you paid tax on it, you stuck it in a mutual fund, or you bought a stock, or you bought a bond, or you got a brokerage account, or savings, seedings, right? Those kind of funds. Anything like that is reportable on FAFSA, both parent and students. If you got a business over 100 employees, again, reportable. If you got property other than your house, that's reportable. When you start to get into these property things here, they're looking for fair market value. And fair market value is what you could actually get for that, you know, let's say you have a summer home in, you know, I don't know, Tennessee or something, wherever, Wisconsin, pick a state. And so fair market value is what you could get for that property if you actually sold it like right here, right now, you know, today, October 5th or whatever, when you're doing the form. So it's not waiting 6 months, it's not waiting a year. You can give a good faith estimate. You know, if there's a range, I would go on the low end of that. You don't want to build any more equity into that than you obviously have to. What's not reportable? Your house. We talked about that, right? So that's great, right? They took the house off. That's awesome. Cash value of life insurance is pretty much off the books for everybody. Very, very rarely do I see this come up. Not too often. Value of IRAs, 401ks, pensions, anything 403bs, 457, simple SEPs, Roth, anything in that qualified column is not reportable. Someone's got a question about what about custodial accounts? A custodial account is going to most likely be an UGMA or UTMA account, which, you know, without seeing exactly how it's titled, my guess is that's probably a student asset. Typically they are. So IRAs, again, these are excluded. Any type of an annuity, whether it's fixed, variable, or fixed indexed, those are all protected assets from the formula. If you've got a business under 100 employees, you don't have to report the value, which is great, right? A lot of small business stuff out there. If you've got a farm that you live on, okay, you don't have to report that. It's really your primary residency. Not a ton of them, you know, left in the area probably, but I guess if you happen to have the lone farm in, you know, DuPage County or whatever, you wouldn't have to put it on there. So, okay, so this is FAFSA stuff. So for profile, what do you think happens? Well, profile wants wants that information. Why? They want to see some stuff before they come up with their own money. So they pretty much add most of this stuff back. So for example, your house, they want to know when you bought it, what you paid for it, what do you owe, how much you know, what's your monthly payment, when you bought it. Again, cash value life insurance is pretty much off of everybody. Very, very, like I can count maybe on one hand that I've seen it in the last, you know, 25 plus years or whatever. It's just not common. IRAs and annuities, all of this stuff, they get lumped under one line on profile. It's under the IRA accounts. They just ask you for total value. Your business under employees, they're going to, again, fair market value, right? Same with the house, fair market value. You know, you don't have to overestimate that. It's a point in time. They're going to ask you who owns the business, what the income, the expenses, what do you think it's worth, what the debt is. So I'll ask you a few questions on that. So the thing with profile is, you know, the good news with it is the schools that do want it typically do meet 100% of need. I mean, they're usually really, really good with their money, but they're going to see this other information. I know some schools ask for the profile and they flat out ignore the home equity and the retirement. They're looking at it for some other stuff. Some schools have a range of what they look at as far as retirement and home equity. So there may be some allowances built into it. Some just put it in there dollar for dollar and run it through the formula. So each college is going to handle this information a little bit differently, which is, again, it's to your advantage to probably have, you know, multiple schools on that list. And that way, if you get a couple profile schools that don't, you know, that handle this a little bit more strict than others, at least you've got some options as far as different routes to go. So, all right. So let's talk about 529s. There's a question on that. These are pretty straightforward. They used to kind of be all over the place, but right as it stands now, if the parent owns one, or if it's a custodial UGMA, UTMA 529, which there's a few of those out there, not really as many of them. Most 529s are going to be owned by the parents. Regardless, all 529s owned by parent or student go on the parent side of the formula, which is great. The assessment's a lot less, but the problem is what if you have 4 kids and you have 4 529s and each of them have 50 grand in it? Okay, well, you own them all, okay, and so you got to put them all on the FAFSA, and that's $200,000 or whatever the number is. And the reality of it is only 50 of that, and that scenario is really allocated for that student. So that would be a special circumstance letter. You would want to let each college know directly, hey, of the 200,000 we had to report on FAFSA, only 50 of that is really earmarked for that student. The other money are 529s for other kids, or something along those lines. But I'll talk about special circumstance here in 1 sec. The other one about 529s is if somebody other than a parent or student owns them, like grandma, grandpa, that's their asset. They own it, and they're not applying for financial aid. You guys are. So if grandma, grandpa own a 529, that's not reportable on a FAFSA. Now, some schools might say, does anybody own a 529? Okay. And if that's the case, obviously you got to disclose that. Yep. Grandma owns one and my son's on there as the beneficiary, that type of thing. So that's 529s. Hope that cleared that up a little bit. I think it did. I think I covered that question. Okay. Does financial aid equal loans? Yes. Back on that one slide, if you noticed, part from federal money, all schools will build in a Stafford loan. They consider that self-help. So yeah, that is considered financial aid as part of the, I guess not all schools will build that in there, but a very, very high percentage of colleges will put a Stafford loan on their award letters. And yeah, so that's a loan and that's self-help. They look at that as self-help. All right, so how many family members in college? We can't include parents anymore. Sorry, guys. So if you're going back, you can't put yourself down as a family member in college. So family members in college, the thing about this is it basically splits up the EFC. So if you've got one in school and it's 20 for one, well, two in school would be 10 for each family member, right? And so obviously, if that creates more need at a college, you may end up with more financial aid from that school. Again, assuming that school is able to meet the need. If a parent is going back to school, let's say there's mom and dad and son and daughter, right? So we have 4 family members, and let's say daughter's going to college first year. Well, for FAFSA, you can only put 4 and 1, 4 family members, 1 in school. But let's say mom's going back for her master's. Again, that would be a special circumstance. You'd want to let them know, you think we can afford $20,000 a year for college, but I'm going back for my master's, it's costing 10, right? Can you guys please take that into account? And financial aid officers do have what's called professional judgment. So they are able to take, special circumstances into account if they feel that it's appropriate, right? And so this would be something, again, you'd want to let them know, we've got a unique situation here. Okay, so single, remarried, divorced, widowed type of situations. So this stuff is actually pretty straightforward. It's who the student lives with more than 50% of the time, 12 months prior to filing. So if that's mom, it's mom. If it's dad, it's dad. I've had scenarios where it's literally 50-50. It is. It's like right down the middle. Well, we have to come up with a custodial parent, right? And so I would run it both ways and say what makes more sense, and then just make sure that the student lives with mom for a month longer or dad for a month longer or whatever, to make sure you're over the halfway mark. So it's pretty straightforward. That's whose information goes on that form. The other parent doesn't. There's nothing on the FAFSA about the other parent. If that parent remarries, the new spouse's information goes on that form, including if they've got other kids and their income and their assets and all of it. So if you were let's say single or divorced for all of 21 and you got married in September and did a form, well, then you would add the new spouse's stuff. And it's kind of the opposite is true. Let's say you were married all of 2021, you got divorced in September, and the custodial parent was mom or dad or whichever one it was. Then when you did the FAFSA in October, you'd have to pick one of those two parents as the custodian. So that relationship is a point in time. It's like the asset, right? It's a point in time when you sign and date the form, if that makes sense. And then widowed is the same deal. The widow one is, I would point out, because they're gonna, even though they're asking for only your information on the form, just make sure they don't, like if you were, if you weren't widowed in 2020 and you have a regular full tax return, when you do the FAFSA, because only then your information will go on there. And when you check widowed, it'll immediately ask you just include your information, and it won't let you do what's called the retrieval tool anymore, because that 2020 tax return is not only your information, right? So I would just make sure that the financial aid offices get that right, and they don't go back and use the wrong numbers. That's the only thing I've seen happen with that, where sometimes it could get confused. So just make sure they're using only your information on stuff like that in a widowed situation. Okay. Oh, one more down there. There you go. So independent versus dependent. And, the joke is, right, can you make someone independent? No, you can't make them independent. But, I hear all sorts of stuff on this one, and all of them are really based on old rules. So if you can't, some of them are still floating around out there, but if you can't say yes to any of these questions, then they're not independent. They're considered dependent for financial aid. Not a ton of high school seniors for the most part, but if you can say yes to any of these, they are considered independent, and only their information would go on the FAFSA form, not parents. The only one I'd point out here is graduate work. If, let's say your daughter goes to, let's say she goes to Elmhurst and she graduates and she wants to go on to nursing school. So now she's in a master's of nursing or something, right? So that would be a graduate work. So for when she does a FAFSA, only one family member, one in school, because she's independent, right? Only her stuff. Well, let's say your son's coming along and they're going to go to a 4-year school. And you're providing half the support for your daughter. Well, you still have 4 family members, and now you still have 2 in school, right? So just make sure that if your older does continue on, it's depending on how that, who's supporting who and all of that. It could be where you still have her as a family member in this case, and be able to count her as an additional family member in school, which obviously can reduce the EFC and maybe help out your son. So, all right, special circumstances. I talked about a few of these. First of all, there's nowhere on the FAFSA form to talk about any of this stuff. So if you've got anything, outside the box that FAFSA is looking for, there's nowhere to put it. So where do they go? They have to go to each individual college. I would just contact the Office of Financial Aid and say, hey, we've got unique circumstances. I want to let you know about them. And they'll tell you, mail them, fax them, email them, download them, whatever their process is. I would just, get it in how they want it. So what would be a special circumstance? Well, unemployment, job change. I made $150,000 in 2020, got fired, lost my job because of COVID, let go, whatever the case may be. And I've got a new job and it's $80,000 a year. Okay. That's significantly different, right? That's a decreasing income. I had to take 20 grand out of my 401k in 2020 to survive. It was a one-time distribution. It hadn't happened before. It's not going to happen again. Again, I would let them know about that. Child support. I got 12 months of child support in 2020. Child support's not taxable, but it does get added back on FAFSA. So they're going to see you got 12 months of child support in 2020. Well, in 2022, the year you're going to college, maybe you only got 6 months because they graduated or turned 18. Well, they're basing your ability to pay on having 12, and really you only got 6. So I would let them know, hey, I know you're basing your ability to pay on 12 months, but the reality is this year I only got 6 months. Again, that's a decreasing income. Private tuition. If you've got kids in private school or you're in home or you're homeschooling, there's costs with that. Anything like that, I would let them know about. The multiple 529s. I don't have it up here, but if mom or dad are going back to college and you're paying for it, I would definitely let them know about that and see if they can take that into account. So really anything that has a negative impact on your ability to pay what they think you can afford to pay, that's reasonable, right? That makes sense. Not, oh, I spent all my money on a Ferrari and now I have debt or whatever, right? That's not reasonable. Okay. No one's going to probably pay attention to that. And I get that that's kind of extreme, but the point being is if they're legitimate issues that have come up that have the negative impact on your ability to pay what they think you can, you just let the colleges know, send one to each of the schools. All of them are going to look at that. Some are going to be able to say, yep, we'll work with you on it and we'll try to make some adjustments. Others might say, we're sorry, we've tapped out as best we can. We don't have any extra money, but you know what? It cannot hurt to ask. The worst case scenario is you end up with exactly what you started with on the award letter. And so it's definitely worth asking, hey, can you guys take a look at this stuff? All right, so that's where they would go. And I'll just finish up here real quick, give you a quick kind of overview of what I do. If you haven't probably already guessed, I help families with this process. I've actually changed the way I do this a little bit from years past. And my CPA now is handling all my forms, which I got to tell you, I've never, that might not be exciting to a lot of people, but it's pretty cool for me. It takes a lot off my plate and really frees me up to do the planning part of this, which is really, I think, where I bring the value. So I've changed my pricing schedule as a result of that. I just charge a flat $250 now. That's like just, you have me as like a financial advisor kind of thing, but I get it for the next 3-4 years or whatever, while college is going on. We're going to lock in and focus on the financial aid stuff. But again, we'll poke around the retirement, make sure everything's, nothing's getting, nothing gets knocked out of whack because of school. So it's meant to be sort of that sort of holistic approach, but at the same time, really making sure we focus on the financial aid stuff, making sure we're maximizing packages. Do we need to move assets or change things or whatever? We figure all that out. So if you're interested in doing that, I charge $250. That's my fee. My CPA John charges $100 to do FAFSAs and $175 to do profiles. So if you're interested in having him do your forms, you can. If not, I give you everything back that you need. You can do your own form or however you want to handle that. So, and there's my contact. And if you have any questions, let me know. How's that? Any questions on stuff? I don't know, Larissa, how you want to do questions, Larissa? I'm not sure.
Any of our guests tonight can definitely use the chat function at the bottom of the screen. If there are any questions either for Paul or for Mahara, I want to make sure that our participants tonight have a chance to ask those questions. So Meg Connolly and I have access to view that, and I want to make sure that we can address any of those questions. And Paul, if you could make Meg Connolly a host as well.
Oh, did she get bounced out?
Yeah, she'll be
Okay.
able to
Hang
view
on.
the questions as well.
Yeah, let me find her. So where'd Meg go? I lost her in here. Let me find her.
And thank you again, both of you, for joining us tonight. All of our participants, I know, received a lot of valuable information tonight, so I do appreciate the information shared about both the college process as well as the financial aid process.
Oh, my pleasure. Happy to do it.
Yes, it was a good time.
Much. Yes, I'm back. Sorry, Paul. When I made you the host, it took away
They
my
kicked you out?
privilege. But yes, thank you so much for everyone that came. If you need further information on any of our guests, your students can come find us in the counseling department and we can give them that information if you didn't get it tonight or weren't able to write it down. And we'll also, as Larissa said at the beginning, we recorded this presentation. So we will definitely share this on the Westmont High School website as well. So it can be viewed later and you can kind of like fast forward and rewind if there's any like specific areas you want to touch on again.
I do have one additional question here. It looks like this is a question about account assets. How do you handle checking account assets as they go up and down during the month?
Yeah, I see that one too. So yeah, checking stuff is kind of weird. I mean, technically the way the form, the way it's written is whatever it is at that point in time when you sign and date the form. I mean, I get it. Stuff is fluid, and maybe if there's like an average that you have in there typically or something would probably be okay. But the minute you put that number down and a week later it changes, right? So I guess what I wouldn't do is have a bunch of money in checking that you got to write checks out for. I wouldn't do the form first and then write the checks. I'd probably write the checks first and then do the form. You know what I mean? And then there's another one in there about ESC, FAFSA. Does every school receive the detail? So, all right. So for FAFSA, schools get what's called the student. You get that too. You can go in and log in and look at it, but it's a student aid report. And it basically reiterates a lot of the information that's on there. There's some other coding and stuff that some of the schools that they use some of that for. But they do see that EFC number off of that, and that's predominantly what they use from that. But it talks about, it'll show you like if you've got loans outstanding on it. It'll tell you if you're eligible for Pell Grant. There's a couple other things on there, but yeah, the schools do get that report. And if you, I didn't really go into, but if you use the IRS retrieval tool to submit your income numbers, then the schools will get an official IRS transcript that'll come directly from the IRS. If you're cool doing that, that's great. If you're not, I have clients that don't want to do that, which is fine. They don't have to. If that's the case, then I would go to the IRS and get an official transcript, and then just sign it with an original signature, and you can mail that in or email it into them. So sophomore, is it too early or just in time? Is that for admissions or that last one, Larissa?
I can't see that, Paul, so if you could read the question.
Okay, it just says, okay, my daughter's a sophomore. Is it too early or just in time? Not sure if that's for financial. I'll let you you guys can answer that. But as far as financial aid goes, no. I would say for Paul. Okay, So I would say anytime in high school really is, is not too, it's not too early and not too late.
But only senior students are the only ones completing the FAFSA. So
Right, yeah, right. Yep.
not
So
sure
yeah, if you came in early, we would just map everything out and figure it all out and get an idea of what, what might or might not make sense. And then that way, when the senior year comes around, you should be in good shape, ready to go.
Yes, and as far as the admission process goes, obviously students, sophomores or junior, even freshmen can, come for college visits, any admission events that we host, but of course it's just seniors typically who will be applying at this point in time.
And we do encourage, through our counseling department, we encourage our freshmen, sophomores, and junior students to start exploring colleges early. So going on those college visits, checking out websites, attending any fairs, college fairs. Now, I know the pandemic has changed things quite a bit. However, colleges and universities throughout the country had quite a few virtual events, and many of those virtual events are, what gave our students, especially in the last year, an opportunity to explore many of these schools in order to make the best choices for where they might want to apply this school year. So students who are currently in their freshman, sophomore, or junior year, we definitely encourage them to continue doing that exploration as well.
Yeah,
I had
I
a
would agree.
question
Just from a parent's perspective, I mean, what we would do too is just even if we were going somewhere or traveling and there happened to be a school somewhere in the area, we would try to stop. You know what I mean? It's kind of around there anyways, and you could maybe spend a half a day it gives you, because each campus has sort of its own vibe, and you get a sense. I think the campus visits are super helpful. I agree, and I don't think it's too early to start. That's just coming from a parent's perspective. For us, it was helpful. So.
And doing those individual visits is important, but going to those college fairs where you have an opportunity to talk to a lot of different colleges at the same point is also helpful. If you go onto our Westmont High School Counseling website, if you click under counseling events, we have information there about some of those larger counseling, college counseling fairs that are available, and those change periodically. The link that we have there is for the ones that are done large scale, if that makes sense.
Yeah, cool. To complete, oh, here's another
Great
one.
question.
Do you complete FAFSA every year? Yeah. So yeah, you would redo one every October. It's not in it, and as long as your financial picture stays similar, the award letters are probably going to be pretty consistent. I mean, if something changes, dramatically one way or the other, you might see some changes, but if your income, assets, all that stuff is pretty, pretty similar to what it was the prior year, you should see a very close award letter. Anything else?
Looks like those are all the questions that we've had. So we're going to stop our event for the evening. Thank you so much to everyone who's joined us tonight. I do appreciate it. I know we've made a lot of progress, I feel like, throughout this pandemic, and making sure we continue bringing information to our students and families. And we appreciate Mahara and Paul for joining us this evening. If there are any follow-up questions to tonight's presentation, please do not hesitate to reach out to me or to Meg Connolly. We are happy to answer them, or reach out directly to Mahara or Paul.
Yep. Sounds good.
Yeah, thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thanks guys. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Have a wonderful evening.
Okay,
Good night,
you too. See
everyone.
ya. Thanks guys. See ya.
Okay.